All right, welcome back. Last time we covered using Excel to add appointments and tasks to Outlook. This time we're going to go over working with worksheets, specifically creating a monthly calendar for a given number of months, adding holidays and birthdays to that calendar, and then exporting to a PDF. So let's jump over to the birthday sheet. Notice I've got 4 sheets down there. I've got birthdays, email addresses, data input, and a monthly calendar sheet. I unhid those, but normally I would leave these 3 sheets hidden. So let's go ahead and hide those. First thing I want to bring your attention to is the upper right. I've got create calendar beginning on, and I've got a named range named start date. Next to that, I've got the number of months and a named range num month. And I've added some data validation to the starting date. So we go to the data tab and go to data validation, look at the settings. I've got this checking to see that the date that's put in there is the first day of whatever month we're starting on. So if I go here and I change this to January 2nd of 2023, I get an error message that says your calendar must begin on the first day of a month. And I'll click retry. Takes me back in there, and I can put that back to January 1st. And I've got the number of months that I want to do this calendar. So let's go ahead and make an 18-month calendar. And let's go to our custom tab. And we're going to click the create calendar button just so we can see the results. I have now individual Excel sheet tabs with holidays highlighted in yellow, birthdays in blue, and empty days, meaning days that are not in that current month, are highlighted in gray. So we're going to go into the code window. We're going to hit Alt F11 and let's go into mod calendar. First thing I want to talk about is the public variable first day of month as date. So if I dim a variable inside a function or sub, that variable is only visible and only accessible inside that function or sub. I can't change data or retrieve data from that variable from anywhere else. But by making this one public, I can pass values to that public variable and retrieve values from that public variable from anywhere in my code. So let's go ahead and run that code. The first thing it's going to do is look at the number of sheets. If there are more than 4, it's going to tell me there's already a calendar created and ask me if I want to delete that and start over. If I say yes, then it's going to call the remove calendar sub and continue on with the code. If I say no, it's just going to exit. So let's go ahead and say yes. And now it's going to loop through all my worksheets. And if the worksheet is anything other than the 4 default worksheets, it's going to delete them and go back to the birthday sheet. Next thing, I'm going to take and set screen updating to false, display alerts to false, and calculation to manual. All those 3 lines are going to do is stop the screen updating, display alerts, and calculation from firing. And that'll speed your code up. It's more apparent the longer your code is, but any little bit helps in speeding the code up. So now I'm going to set my first day of month variable, that public variable we defined, to the value in the start date range, which in this case is January 1st of 2023. And I'm going to loop through from 1 to whatever number we put in that beginning month, number of months. So in this case, it's going to be 1 to 18. It's going to take the monthly calendar sheet, set it to visible, select that sheet, and clear any data out of that sheet. So let's go down and look at that monthly calendar sheet. So I have a blank calendar. I have the month and year. I have the 7 days of the week, and I've got 6 weeks. At the very first week, I've got named ranges first Sunday through first Saturday, and that's going to help us figure out where to start the month, depending on what day of the week the first day of that month is. And now we're going to call the set first week sub and pass to that the first day of month, which in this case is January 1st of 2023. And we're going to look at the weekday of that first date. In this case, it's Sunday. So it's going to go select case weekday, first date, case 1, Sunday, set first Sunday equal to my beginning date. Monday is +1 all the way to Saturday +6. And my first week is filled out. I've got January 1st to January 7th. Now we're going to reset that first day of month, and we're going to use the worksheet function EO month or end of month. EO month takes a date, goes forward a set number of months, and gives the last day of that month. So in this case, we're going 0 months forward, meaning we're going to find the last day of January and then add 1 day to that to get the first day of February. And now we're going to go to populate first month. So populate first month, I've got R and C defined as variance to hold my rows and columns. I've got a target date, a first date, and a last row. So first, we're going to make sure we're on the monthly calendar sheet. We're going to set the target date equals to that first Saturday. The first date is range A3. Go to the right until you find data. So let's go to A3, and then we'll go to the right. In this case, it's the Sunday, first day. And now we're going to loop through rows 5 through 13. And columns 2 through 14. We're going to check if the row is odd and the column is even. So we're on row 5. That's an odd number. And the column B is an even column. So that's where we're going to put the next date. So we're checking the odd and even. If the month of target date, which in this case is the first Saturday of the month, +1 is equal to the month of the first date. So if they're in the same month, then my cell row R, column C value becomes target date +1. And remember, our target date was that first Saturday. And then we're going to increment target date up by 1. So now the 8th is popped in there, and we're going to loop through the next iteration. Sorry, we're finding odd row and even column, checking to make sure date +1 is equal to the same month as the first date. Add 1 to that target date and then increment target date up by 1. So we loop through those rows and columns until we got to the end, and now we're going to loop done. We're going to copy that monthly calendar, put it at the end of the workbook. We're going to set the name of that equal to the first day of the month, formatted as month year. And we're going to set range A1 equal to that first day of the month. So now we've got a January 2023 tab, and the first cell there that's emerged cell is January 1st of 2023, but it displays just as January 2023. And now we're going to find the last row in column B that has data. To do that, we're going to go into column B. We're going to go all the way down, come up until we find data, and we're going to capture that row number. So the only real options here are row 9 and row 11. We could have something in row 13. So if last row equals 9, then we're going to delete rows 11 to 14. If it equals 11, we're going to delete rows 13 and 14. If it was anything else, we do nothing. All that did is get rid of that empty week down at the bottom. And then we're going to call Zoom Calendar. And all Zoom Calendar is going to do is set the range as the range with data in it, and then zoom to that and go back to row 1, and that just zooms in to make it a little easier to read. And now we're on to the next month. Check to make sure monthly calendar is visible again, select monthly calendar, clear the data, and call the first day of the month. Looking at that, remember we reset first day of month, which is now February 1st of 2023, and we're going to look at what weekday that is. So it was Wednesday, so first Wednesday becomes the first date, Thursday +1, Friday +2, Saturday +3. You see that my month is populated there. And let's go ahead and let that run through, and that's going to run through the next 18 times. Now, I want to do the holidays last because that's probably the most, not complicated, but most involved bit of code that we've got here. So let's just go ahead and let that run, and then we'll go to the mark birthday. So mark birthdays, we're going to loop through all the sheets in the workbook, and if the sheets are not one of the 4 default sheets, we're going to add that to a collection called months. And that's just so that we can capture how many months we've got and be able to loop through the correct amount of months to add the birthdays to it. We're going to go down, we selected the birthday sheet, and we're going to loop through column D, which is where we've got the dates of birth. And we're going to do for Y equals 1 to the number of months in that collection. And we're going to instance a new instance of class birthdays. Class birthdays is a class module that we just added members, birthday age, birthday date, and birthday name. So we're instancing a new instance of that class and setting the name equal to the first name and last name. The birthday equal the birthday year. So this is the date of their birthday in a given year and their age on that birthday, and then add that class to a collection. So that's going to loop through all the birthdays and populate instance of classes into a collection. Run that through. Now we're going to loop through the sheets again. And if it's not one of the default sheets, meaning it's one of the monthly calendar sheets, it's going to select that sheet and set a range equal to the range with data in it. And then we're going to loop through each class in that collection, each cell in that range. And if the birthday date is equal to the cell value on the calendar, if there's nothing in that cell, then set that cell offset by 1 row and left by 1 column to be their name, a line break, their age using the ordinal function, and the word birthday, and then set the cell to blue, and then go through the next cell in that range. Now, if there is something already in that birthday cell, that means someone else shares that birthday, and it's just going to take the value that's already in there, add a line break, and then add the name and age of the person for the next birthday. All right, the next thing we're going to do is mark the empty days. To do that, we're going to loop through again, loop through the sheets. We are going to, if it's not one of the default sheets, we're going to select that sheet and we're going to loop through rows 3 through 13. And if that row is odd, then we're going to set a range that goes from cell 1 in that row to cell 14 in that row. And we're going to check to see if there's any data in that row. So if the count A for that range is greater than 0, meaning there's data anywhere in that row, then we're going to loop through columns 1 through 14. If that column is even, then if row R and column C equals 0, then we're going to set 3 cell groupings to gray. We're going to set that row and that column. We're going to set that row and column -1 and row +1 and column -1. All of those get set to gray. Let that run all the way through, and then you see any empty days, meaning days that are not in that current month, turn gray, and it just makes it a little easier to see where your month actually lives. All right, we're going to select the monthly calendar sheet. We're going to select the next sheet after that, and we're going to set monthly calendar back to visible equals false. Select the first row and turn display alerts back on, screen updating back on, and calculation back to automatic. And now we've got an 18-month calendar from January of 2023 until June of 2024. So now let's go back into the code. We're going to go back into mod calendar, and we're going to look at the mark holidays. Before we get to actually looking at the mark holidays sub, let's go into the module mod holidays, and we'll look at those holidays and how that works. Now, these are U.S. federal holidays. There are 2 different methods for determining the date of a U.S. federal holiday. There are date-based holidays. So Christmas is December 25th. New Year's is January 1st. Independence Day is July 4th. But there's a little bit of a twist to those. So we'll start with with a date base. So if the actual day of the holiday falls on a Saturday, the holiday moves back one day to become Friday. If the actual day of the holidays falls on a Sunday, it goes forward one day, so that Monday becomes the holiday. If the actual date of the holiday is any other day, it just stays on the same day. So holiday New Year, I pass an optional year, and I'm going to return a date. I've got a temp, I've got a dim DT as variant. If is error year, meaning I didn't pass a year, then V year becomes the year of the current date. I set my date DT equals to the date value of January 1st and whatever we determined the year was. And then we're going to look at the weekday of that day. If it's 1 or Sunday, we add 1 day to that date. If it's 7 or Saturday, we subtract 1 from that date. Anything else, we just leave it at that date, and holiday New Year becomes that date. The other way of determining a holiday is a given position of a day in a month. So, for example, the Martin Luther King holiday is the third Monday in January. So to do that, we're going to use a function called X day of Y month. So let's go down and take a look at that. All right, the X day of Y month function. I've got 4 different parameters that we pass to this. 3 of them are mandatory, 1 is optional. The first is the position. That's the which day of the week are we looking for, the 1st through the 5th or the last. The day index is 1 through 7, 1 being Sunday, 7 being Saturday. The target month is 1 through 12, 1 for January, 12 for December. And the optional variable is the target year. If you pass a target year, it uses that. If you don't pass one, it uses the current system year. So stepping through the function, the first thing it's going to do is look to see if the day index is valid, meaning if it's 1 to 7. If it's not, then it errors out and exits the function. But if it's day index of 1 through 7, we're good. Next, we'll check the target year. If is missing target year, then target year equals year of the current system date. And then we're going to look at the position. The only valid positions are 1 through 5 or last. So you can't have 6 occurrences of a single Monday in a month. So that's where your 1 through 5 comes in. So the first step in this is finding the first day of the month that we're looking at. So first date equals serial date, target year, target month, and 1 for the first day of the month. And then we're going to find the first instance of the target weekday. So let's say we're looking for the first Sunday in a month. We look at the weekday of that first day of the month. And if the weekday of that first day of the month is less than the day index that we passed, 1 through 7, then the first position of, in this case, Sunday, is first date plus day index minus weekday of the first date. If it's not, meaning if it's not less than the day index, then you take the first date plus the day index plus 7 minus the weekday of the first day. After that, we're going to find the numeric position in the month. So if is numeric the position, meaning if it's 1 through 5, then X day of Y month equals first position, the first Sunday of the month, plus position minus 1 times 7. So this gives us the multiples of 7 days to find which instance we're looking for. So if we're looking for the third Sunday, position minus 1 times 7 is going to return 21. And we're going to take the first position of the first Sunday and add 21 days to it to find the third Sunday of the month. And then if the month of X day, Y month that we just passed does not equal the month of the first day of the month, then it errored out and the function is going to return an error. If you pass the last, so we're going to look, and set X day of Y month equal to the first position of the weekday that we're looking for. And then we're going to loop through until the month of X day Y month does not equal the month of X day Y month plus 7. And then at that point, X day of Y month becomes X day of Y month plus 7. So we're looking for the last occurrence in a month. So let's go ahead and write a quick sub to test this function out. So I'm going to do sub test X of Y. So I equals X day of Y month. And let's do third Tuesday. Let's do Wednesday in March. And let's go ahead and loop through that. So we're checking our day index. It's valid, so it moves on. Checking the target year, which I didn't pass, so that becomes the year of the current date. I'm checking the position, and it is one of the valid positions, 1 through 5 or last. We're finding the first day of the month. So first day is now equal to the first day of March 2022. We're checking to see if the weekday of the first day of the month is less than the day index. And in this case, it is. So first position of Wednesday is going to be first date of the month plus day index minus weekday of the first day of the month. Now our position is numeric, so we're not looking for the last. X day of Y month equals first position plus position minus 1 times 7. So the position was the third. So we're going to take the 3 minus 2. 3 minus 1 is 2. Times 7 is 14. We're going to take the first position of the occurrence of Wednesday in the month, add 14 to it. My month of the X day of Y month is in the current month, and there is the date value of the third Wednesday of March 2022. So that is how we determine a positional holiday. And I've got a individual function for each of the federal holidays. I also have a function to determine the value of Easter, which is not a U.S. federal holiday, but it was just really interesting code to figure out. Easter is the first Sunday after the first full moon after the ecclesiastical spring equinox of March 21st for a given year. And I just included that because I wanted to. So besides each of the individual U.S. holidays, I have a function for is holiday. You pass a date to that, and it loops through each of the holidays. It initially sets is holiday to false, and then checks to see if the date you passed equals each of those individual holidays. If it equals one of them, it sets is holiday to true and goes on to the next one. And then I've got next holiday, which looks to see if you've passed a date. If you have, great. If you haven't, it uses the current date, and then it looks at the is holiday function. If it's true, then it sets next holiday date equals that date. If it's not, it loops through adding one day at a time until it finds is holiday equals true, and the next holiday date becomes that date. This will make a little more sense later. Next holiday name does the same thing, except for it loops through and uses the what holiday function to return a string. So if the date that you pass to it equals New Year's Day in that year, then what holiday becomes New Year's Day or MLK birthday or whatever holiday it is. So now let's go back to our calendars and let's step through the mark holidays sub. So it's asking me if I want to start over. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to loop through each of the worksheets. If it's not one of the default worksheets, it's one of the monthly calendar sheets. I'm going to set my range equal to the range with data in it. I'm going to loop through that range, and if the cell in that range is a date, then check to see if that date is a holiday using the function isHoliday. And I just know that the first holiday is going to be New Year's Day, so let's just let it run through until it gets to that. It sets isHoliday to true. It's going to set the interior of that cell to yellow. It's going to set the font to bold. It's going to set the value to the function whatHoliday. It's going to loop through that, and it's going to populate the whatHoliday and color that entire thing yellow, and then it's going to move on to the next. So let's just go ahead and let that run. And now I've got all my birthdays and I've got my holiday. I'll put a link in the description to allow you to download this code. The last thing I want to cover is exporting to PDF. So let's go back into our code window. Let's go back into the mod calendar. We're going to look at the sub print sheets to PDF. So I've defined a folder address as a string, SHT as a worksheet, an array as a string. I haven't defined how big the array is. We'll do that later. And I as a variant. So I equals 1. And then I'm going to redim my array from 1 to the number of months in the num months field. In this case, 18. And so now if my active workbook sheets is less than 5, then it means I don't have a calendar, and it's just going to warn me, hey, you've got to create a calendar before you can export the calendar and exit the sub. Let's go ahead and run this. I'm going to loop through all of my sheets. And if it's not one of the default sheets, if it's one of the monthly calendars, it's going to add that sheet name to my array at position I, and then it's going to increment I up by 1, and it's going to do that for whatever number of times I've defined that array as. And then I'm going to select all of those sheets by using the sheets my array select. But if I use sheets my array select, you can see that it selected all of those calendar sheets at the same time. I'm going to set my folder equal to the active workbook path, and I'm going to use active sheet, which in this case is all of the calendar sheets, export as fixed format, type PDF, and the file name is going to be my folder name and birthday calendars. Open after publish is true, and ignore print areas as false. I want to actually use the print areas, and then select my birthday sheets. And I get a PDF with 18 sheets. Each sheet is a calendar with the birthdays and the holidays already populated on it. There's quite a bit to digest there. Again, I'm going to put a link in the comments where you can download the code for this. I hope you've learned something. If you have, I'd appreciate a thumbs up and a subscription. Please tell your friends. And until next time, this has been VBA Made Easy. Thank you. Have a great day.